The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 became one of the most destructive and well-known disasters in the history of the United States. Starting in October, within a matter of hours, it turned the sky into a crimson inferno, destroying nearly 4 square miles of the city. The fire raged for more than 30 hours, leaving over 100,000 residents homeless and claiming the lives of 300 people. In just a couple of days, this cataclysm wiped more than 17,000 buildings off the face of the earth, leaving behind an apocalyptic landscape. It is said that the rapid spread of the flames was caused by the weather conditions. That year, the city suffered from drought, and winds from Lake Michigan only made the disaster worse. But there was another reason. At that time, Chicago was a city of wooden structures. Houses, sidewalks, and even some roads were made of wood. This meant that a spark could quickly turn into an uncontrollable fire. The methods of fighting fires back then were far from perfect, which also played a devastating role. As a result of the fire, only a few buildings survived, among them the water tower and the warehouse, which became symbols of Chicago's survival. A few days after the tragedy, large crowds of people began returning to their destroyed homes, trying to somehow revive life on the still smoldering ashes. The city's fire department, whose equipment had been destroyed in the blaze, was forced to improvise. It seemed that Chicago was doomed, but even then the city had an incredible ability to recover. The tragedy marked the beginning of a new era for Chicago as a modern metropolis of stone and steel began to rise in its place. But what was the true cause of this devastating disaster, and was there any element of intent behind it? A mysterious night. Who was really to blame? As we delve into that fateful night, it becomes clear that the fire started in the southwest part of Chicago, known as the DeKoven Street district. Everyone talks about the mystical atmosphere that enveloped that autumn evening. There are different versions about what became the spark that ignited this inferno. One of the most famous stories is connected to a cow that allegedly knocked over a kerosene lamp in the barn of a certain Mrs. O'Leary. However, many believe that this is just a myth. Others claim that the cause could have been workers who were careless with fire. Some even accused Irish immigrants of arson because of political disagreements during those difficult times. In the darkness of that night, no one could determine exactly where and how it all began. Witnesses recall that the speed at which the fire spread was so rapid that few had time to realize where the flames would strike next. Adding to the mystery is the fact that, in the hours before the fire began, the city was unusually quiet. This ominous calm only intensified the horrors of that night. Despite numerous investigations, the exact cause was never determined. Several local residents claimed to have seen some suspicious individuals, but their testimonies did not lead to any concrete conclusions. As the fire engulfed the city, people watched helplessly as their homes turned to ashes. That night left many questions unanswered. What was the true cause of this sudden disaster? And was it really an accident, or was there perhaps someone's malicious intent behind it? Time will tell. But for now, the mysteries of the Chicago tragedy remain unsolved. Mrs. O'Leary and her cow, myth or reality? Among the many stories and rumors about the causes of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, one name comes up again and again: Mrs. Catherine O'Leary. Local legends claim that it all began with an unfortunate cow that knocked over a kerosene lamp in her barn. This version became so deeply rooted in people's minds that many still consider it the only truth to this day. But let's look at the facts. Right after the fire, local newspapers picked up this story, perhaps in pursuit of a sensation. Mrs. O'Leary, an Irish immigrant, became the perfect scapegoat against the backdrop of the political tension and prejudice of that time. However, as it later turned out, there were many inconsistencies in this story. For example, on the night of the disaster, O'Leary claimed that she was at home and already asleep when the fire started. Several neighbors confirmed her words, especially noting that she hadn't used a lamp that night. Nevertheless, for most city residents, the myth about the cow became a symbol of carelessness and the randomness that can lead to tragedy. But it's not that simple. Later, other versions emerged. One of them claimed that teenagers playing with fire in the barn were to blame for everything. Another version suggested that workers on the nearby railroad tracks could have been the cause. But none of the versions were supported by sufficient evidence. In 1909, journalists investigating the events of that night concluded that the story about the cow was simply a fabrication. This admission came too late and was a bitter consolation for Mrs. O'Leary, who suffered from accusations and public condemnation her entire life. Nevertheless, whether truth or myth, this image became an integral part of the city's folklore, drawing attention to the unsolved mysteries and other unusual aspects of this tragedy. But what else was happening in the city while people were blaming an innocent cow? The commotion around other suspicious events was growing. Hidden heroes and forgotten victims. As the flames mercilessly engulfed the city, Chicago's residents saw the rise of their own heroes, whose names unfortunately remained in the shadows. Among them were firefighters who tirelessly fought the flames, risking their lives despite worn-out gear and a lack of modern equipment. Their courage made it possible to save some parts of the city from total destruction. However, it wasn't just professionals who took part in this struggle. Ordinary townspeople, armed only with buckets of water and blankets they tried to use to beat back the flames, became heroes for a few moments. The suffering of those who lost everything in this fiery whirlwind must not be forgotten. Among the victims were both wealthy citizens and those who were barely making ends meet. The gaze of truth and justice spared none of them, leaving behind only a handful of ashes and memories. Stories of people rescuing their loved ones from burning houses spread like whispers through the streets and remained forever in the hearts of the survivors. Among these stories stands out the fate of a group of children who were found hiding in the basement of a destroyed building. They miraculously survived thanks to a brave soul who led them through the raging sea of fire. He was an unnamed hero who appeared only briefly in the chronicles of those events, but his feat remained forever in their memory. The mysterious events of that night leave behind many questions, not only about the causes of the fire, but also about those who remained outside the scope of official reports. Who are those heroes and victims whose names have been lost in the noise of time? The mysteries of the past continue to spark interest and reveal new facets of the events, showing that human kindness and courage can shine even in the darkest hours. But what is the true strength of Chicago, which managed to rise from the ashes and gain a new face? The aftermath of the fire. A new face for Chicago? After the devastating fire of 1871, Chicago faced a difficult choice: to remain in ruins or to rise and transform. The city chose the latter, and this decision marked the beginning of the greatest transformation in its history. The ruined buildings and charred streets became the foundation for new construction, which turned Chicago into a symbol of the modern metropolis. Architects and engineers from all over the world flocked to the city, inspired by the opportunity to build something new using advanced technologies and materials. The construction of the first skyscrapers, which became symbols of a new era, marked the beginning. The first was the Home Insurance Building, constructed in 1885. This building, over 10 stories tall, was the first in the world to be built on a steel frame, which replaced the unreliable wooden structures. This approach quickly became the standard for all future high-rise buildings. The drive for safety led to the introduction of strict building codes, which completely transformed construction technology. From then on, buildings in Chicago were constructed from stone and steel, eliminating the possibility of a similar tragedy. The fire also contributed to the development of engineering solutions in urban planning and infrastructure. The first modern water supply and sewage systems appeared, providing reliable fire protection and improving the quality of life. The reconstruction of streets became more deliberate, which improved transportation accessibility and contributed to economic growth. Born from the ashes, Chicago became a model of engineering ingenuity and futuristic solutions, standing at the forefront of architecture and urban planning. This city accepted the challenge of fate and turned into a symbol of unwavering will to survive and develop. But what happened to the secrets and myths that surrounded that fiery whirlwind? They did not disappear along with the charred remains of the old Chicago. The mysteries of those events continue to spark interest and reveal new facets of history within which answers to unresolved questions are hidden. Mysterious testimonies and contradictory accounts. As the city, engulfed in flames, descended into darkness and chaos, eyewitness stories began to surface, describing strange events on that fateful night. Among them were accounts of mysterious figures seen near the site of the fire. Some residents reported seeing people who appeared to be strangers, hastily leaving the DeKoven Street area shortly before the fire began. These testimonies, although not confirmed by official records, sparked a wave of rumors and speculation. As the flames spread, panic began to set in. Residents recounted how a group of unknown individuals may have deliberately started new fires. Some claimed to have seen these suspicious figures smashing kerosene lamps, fueling the blaze. Witnesses recalled hearing strange sounds in the night, reminiscent of explosions, which no one could explain. Investigations conducted after the tragedy encountered numerous contradictions. The testimonies of residents were fragmented and often mutually exclusive, making it impossible to form a complete picture. However, there are also those who claim that all these inconsistencies arose due to shortcomings in the initial investigation protocols, which may have been biased and incomplete. Interestingly, in the following years, some of these testimonies became the subject of journalistic investigations. Some reporters theorized that the fire was deliberately set in order to cover up other crimes or to become part of a larger game involving unexpected interested parties. This aspect leaves the impression that some part of the truth remains untold and hidden within a genuine web of intrigue and conflicting testimonies. But what the true motives were is hard to say for certain. Mysteries and questions remain, sustaining interest in this tragedy and reminding us how little we sometimes know about the events that have changed history. Rivalry and revenge. Hidden motives for arson. The hidden motives behind the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, shrouded in the mists of time, remain the subject of many theories and speculations to this day. At that time, Chicago was at the height of its economic boom, and competition among entrepreneurs had reached incredible heights. Among the theories, one stands out. The fire may have been deliberately set for economic gain. Several influential businessmen closely tied to real estate were allegedly trying to make the most of the disaster's aftermath for their own benefit. It is known that by the time of the fire, several businessmen had significant debts and saw the fire as an opportunity to get rid of burdensome assets so that they could later rebuild and resell them at much higher prices. In addition, some competitors were suspected of possibly using the fire as a way to eliminate their rivals and take their place in the market. These suspicions are reinforced by the fact that many of them became rapidly wealthy in the following years, having rebuilt their businesses on the ruins of the old city. This version of events explains the strange inconsistencies in eyewitness testimonies and the growing rumors about suspicious activity that night. Although there is no direct evidence, this fuels the interest of the media and researchers who are trying to uncover the true motives behind these actions. The question of whom this alleged revenge was directed at, or who stood to benefit from setting the city on fire, remains unsolved. The fascination with intrigue and business competition at that time became the backdrop for many events, and Chicago may have been just one of the victims of this dangerous game. The events of that night may never be fully revealed unless new evidence comes to light. However, dark secrets remain on the pages of history, adding mystery to the tragedy of the past and reminding us how greed and competition can sometimes lead to unprecedented disasters. Artifacts and discoveries at the site of the tragedy. After the flames gradually died down and Chicago was enveloped in silence, not only ruins remained at the site of the tragedy, but also numerous artifacts preserving the mysteries of the past. As the city's residents began to rebuild their lives, interesting and sometimes strange finds were discovered among the smoldering debris, shedding light on the lives and everyday routines of people from that era. Among the artifacts found were charred pieces of furniture, as well as ceramic and glass items that had miraculously survived the fire. These items became part of museum collections, illustrating the city's past that was touched by the fiery catastrophe. Their study helped to understand what the interiors of homes looked like and what daily life was like for the residents of that time. But there were also other unusual discoveries. For example, not far from the epicenter of the fire, metal fragments were found that, as historians later determined, could have been part of a mechanism or device used for industrial work. Surprisingly, even more mystical elements were discovered. Some of the charred pages from the libraries pointed to books that were not listed in the planned catalogs. These remaining fragments contained strange symbols and texts in unfamiliar languages, which gave rise to many theories about their origin. Other finds included personal belongings, such as jewelry and coins, which are still kept as relics, serving as reminders of the human lives cut short on that fateful night. Several mysterious capsules containing documents were also discovered, indicating financial transactions and contracts that were never executed. Some of these papers became the basis for new investigations into the economic activities connected to the fire. These findings have remained the subject of study and have become true keys to understanding not only the causes and consequences of the tragedy, but also the cultural heritage of Chicago. Artifacts and discoveries continue to amaze researchers, gradually assembling a more accurate and detailed puzzle of the events of that terrible night. They fill the pages of history with new facts, creating a rich context that reminds us many secrets of the past can still be uncovered. Whoever the residents of this city were, their story lives on in these findings, which continue to inspire and astonish. But what other secrets does this city hold? The future may bring us new discoveries and understanding, allowing us to better grasp the essence of this tragedy and its impact on the fate of Chicago. The impact of the fire on the culture and architecture of the capital. After the Chicago Fire of 1871, the city found itself on the threshold of a cultural and architectural renaissance. This tragedy became a catalyst for the dawn of a new era in urban architecture and culture, as the destroyed wooden structures were replaced by sturdy stone and steel buildings. Architects from all over the world flocked to Chicago, drawn by the unique opportunity to build from scratch. And it was here that the world's first skyscrapers appeared, becoming symbols of a new architectural style. These high-rise buildings, such as the Insurance Building constructed in 1885, laid the foundation for modern architecture with steel frames. New building codes and regulations became stricter, prohibiting the use of flammable materials. Such changes not only increased safety but also contributed to the cultural revival of Chicago. The city quickly became a center of art, music, and theater, attracting artists and musicians whose performances inspired a new generation. The fire also gave impetus to the active development of museums and educational institutions. They became keepers of the city's history and cultural heritage, attracting tourists and researchers. Institutions such as the Art Institute of Chicago played a significant role in the development and support of new artistic movements. Innovative public spaces, parks, and museums emerged in Chicago, which contributed to strengthening the city's cultural identity. The rise of cultural life was inextricably linked with architectural innovations, and together they created a unique atmosphere that set Chicago apart from other metropolises. These changes continued to have an impact in the future, shaping the city's appearance for many decades to come. This unyielding spirit, which helped Chicago not only survive but also thrive after the tragedy, became the foundation for future achievements and left an indelible mark on the history and culture of the United States. But what other events might shed light on the cultural and architectural changes in this restless city? Perhaps new discoveries await us ahead. The future of the city. How Chicago became stronger after the tragedy. After the devastating fire, Chicago did not simply rise from the ashes. It became a symbol of an irrepressible zest for life and the ability to overcome adversity. The city's reconstruction began immediately, and it was not just about building new structures, but also served as a springboard for its economic and cultural rise. Engineers and architects flocked to Chicago, seeing in the destruction an opportunity to create something entirely new. The construction of skyscrapers, which began in 1885, gave rise to a unique urban landscape. These were the first buildings with steel frames, and they quickly became symbols not only of architectural mastery, but also of the resilience of the people of Chicago. The city plan was redesigned in accordance with new building codes, which for the first time began to take safety and durability into account. Wider streets appeared, along with new engineering infrastructure and a public transportation system, making Chicago more convenient for living and working. The city's reconstruction also attracted numerous investors, which contributed to rapid economic development. Culturally, the tragedy served as a catalyst for a new wave of creativity and innovation. Chicago became a cultural center, attracting artists, writers, and musicians from all over the world. The heightened interest in art and culture made the city a place where creative life thrived. Initiatives such as the World's Fair of 1893 brought a tuning fork of innovation and progress to the city's cultural fabric. The tragedy instilled in Chicagoans a resilience and determination that they used to build a forward-looking society. The city continued to develop and grow, turning every challenge into another opportunity for renewal and self-improvement. After the fire, Chicago became not only an example of rebirth, but also a symbol of the American dream, where something great and enduring can be built from the ashes of destruction. The secret to the city's resilience and success lies in its people, who turn tragedy into building blocks for the future.